everybody. Thanks again for inviting me here. I've come many years and I'm always learning from you guys. For instance, the last 2 years I came here on the Sunday of the Wimbledon final as a big tennis player. I learned. This year I came on the day of the bake sale, so really it takes me a while, but I get there. So thank you. And I know I usually start with a joke, but I'm going to start with a kind of a sad story. And we're not exactly sure what happened, but somewhere around 120 years ago, 110 years ago, my grandfather on the same day lost his job. He came home to find that his wife had just found out she had a disease. We don't know what it was, maybe tuberculosis, hopefully not. And on the same day, his daughter came home and she had been robbed. And on the same day, his son came home and he had been beat up at school. This is all on the same day. So of course, what did you do back then when such tragedy occurred? Before they felt better or they weren't depressed anymore, they rushed downtown, went into the store, and went and had a photograph taken. And apparently every time the tragedy struck, from what I can see, they go and have another photograph taken so that every photograph looks like it's the worst day of their lives. And those are all the pictures that I have of my great-grandparents and my grandfather when he was a kid. I don't know why they were so depressed, maybe because the world was, literally black and white back then, I'm not sure, but. So according to Time magazine's article, Now You Know Why Do People Always Look So Serious in Old Photos. Why did they always look so serious? One, bad teeth. All right, apparently because we're all British in nature, right? So that's why. Secondly, it took a while for the photo to work, so you couldn't keep your smile. But another reason, according to Angus Trumbull, the director of the National Portrait Gallery in Australia, smiles were associated with madness, lewdness, loudness, drunkenness, all sorts of states of being that were not particularly decorous. And we don't want anybody not to be decorous, right? So thank goodness we live here today. We have our phones and we can watch clips of Saturday Night Live whenever we want, right? We love to smile. We understand it's great to laugh. Just the other day, in fact, I was invited to speak at an event because I quote, "We want a funny rabbi," right? To come speak to us about anti-Semitism. Yeah, that's what they wanted. And in our country, there really is so much to laugh about and be happy. We live in literally the most powerful country in the world. We're free to vote, to have families. Whenever we eat Southern food like fried chicken, we can have Lipitor, right? We're doing great. You can go out and eat all that Southern food like fried shrimp if you're a heathen, of course, fried Twinkies, which is my favorite. So I recently attended a workshop on demographics. And guess what? When it comes to the world demographics, we are kicking some what we call in Hebrew, tuchas, I can't say what it is here. It's inappropriate, but I can say it that way. For a Western country, we have one of the, if not the highest birth rate. We have an incredible variety of people in America. We're basically as close to heaven as it can get, I think. Let's think about Russia. Demographically, they barely have any men at all to work jobs, let alone go to war. China doesn't have any women. They literally don't have women. And so they're struggling. The birth rate in Europe is one of the lowest in the world. They barely have any kids. And here in America, we may not have invented the bagel, but we perfected it. So this is the place to be. We have a really high living standard on average, and even though we have a lot of serious issues, other countries have it much worse. We may have issues of poverty, equality, and education, But think about some of the countries in the world. We should be living the happiest, stress-free-est life in the world. Then why, when they came out with the recent happiness index, are we number 23? 23. That is 4 spots below Lithuania, right? That is where my ancestors fled from 130 years ago. And now, of course, the question comes to mind, will they take me back, right? Can I go back to Lithuania, right? Now, I can understand countries with a lower index because they're struggling with war. Of course, I'm Jewish, and the country of Israel has been struggling with war, so they fell really far down on the index, all the way to number 5. Yes, they're the 5th happiest country in the world. Curse be upon the land of Iceland that moved up over them. Curse them for that 4-day work week they now have in Iceland. That's right, a 4-day work week. Now, I can't change America and give all of you a 4-day work week. I wish I could. However, there's good news, because as the people who control this church, you can make that change for Billy now. So there will be a letter, one of those automatic ones, you just click yes, that will be going to your president. Just say yes, and Billy will have what he deserves, a 4-day week. So Billy, you're welcome, by the way, from me to you. It is absolutely freezing in Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. And yet that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I can understand how Australia would be so high, number 10, but they have awesome accents. I mean, come on. Just hearing that accent every day would make me happy. But how did we fall below Slovenia and Costa Rica? Literally, we outmedaled them at the Olympics 126-3. According to Proverbs, happy are those who find wisdom, for her income is better than silver and her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than rubies. All of your goods cannot equal her. How can we find the wisdom that makes us happier? How do I get a job that pays me in happiness, as I am always stressed? And I remember when I became so stressed, right when I came out of the womb. And it has been that way ever since I saw my first therapist at 6 years old. I'm stressed about everything. I'm stressed about money, about my job, but that does not have to do with most of you. Waiting for you to get that one. I'm stressed about politics. And if truth be told, we must blame our stress on politics. That is why we're number 3, because politics drives us crazy. Because we know in Israel, they don't have difficult politics there at all, right? In England, they literally have a day every week where their congressmen, their MPs, just scream at their prime minister every single week. And they're way ahead of us. I think for me, I know that breathing is an involuntary function. It's automatic, part of my medulla oblongata. And that's where my stress organ apparently lives as well. My biggest worry, as was so aptly said earlier, is that I worry too much. I worry about how am I going to send 2 kids to Harvard in 10 years when they're qualified. It's expensive, but thank God, for once I have figured out a solution about my kids going to college. I'm going to homeschool them. They may be socially awkward, but they won't have any loans, so it's going to be amazing. When we sit here or stand here today and think about our country, we think about how can we be more stressed. We have 2 giant oceans that keep us from war. We have a great economy. And yes, our expenses drive us crazy because Savannah is getting to be an expensive place. But let me tell you, Europe is much more expensive. Now, all of our worries remain legitimate. I don't want to delegitimize any of the issues we face because they are serious. The question is, how do we handle our anxiety better so that we can be happier human beings in an age where we should be happier human beings? Right there in the Ten Commandments, and I know this is a church, so I'm not sure you've heard of them, but really important things. Number 5, depending on where you are, 4 or 6, I don't know if you have it right or not. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath of the eternal, your God. You shall not do any work. It is a blessed and hallowed day. Before the world developed even the weekend, God taught us we need to take some time off to relax and gain perspective. Whether your Sabbath is on Saturday or incorrectly on Sunday, we are there to honor God's plan, a day of rest to help with anxiety, a way to purify our soul. Dr. Edward Hoffman, who teaches psychology at Yeshiva University, wrote in his Dealing with Stress the Jewish Way, or I should say Dealing with Stress the Correct Way, that a spiritual outlook and a sense of purpose create a sense of being. People who see life as having a larger purpose, as something with meaning, having an easier time then dealing with stress than those who believe it is random and by chance that we are here. That is us. We are people of faith who should internalize that we have a larger purpose. And that larger purpose, he adds, puts things into perspective, realizing there's more than just our situation. How do I deal with a terrible mistake? Use religion. And I have a lot of difficulty dealing with this. I agonize this all the time. I was at Dragon Con, which is a Comic-Con, where you dress up in outfits. I wouldn't be ridiculous like that. And so I went there, and I went to a panel with one of my favorite actors, Alan Tudyk. Great actor. And I was just so thrilled that the next day I happened to run into him, and I said, "You did great." However, I forgot to complete the sentence yesterday at the panel because I was nervous, so I said, "You did great," as we walked out of the bathroom together. I am still stressed by the look on his face. I did not understand my mistake till later that evening when my wife explained that you don't say that in the bathroom, right? These little things we do weigh on our conscience for a long time beyond what they should. Certainly really difficult things, yes, but things like that. The question is, are we focusing on God's plan? Are we trying to center our thoughts on those most intimate connections we have with our families, with our friends, finding our purpose? Hoffman further teaches us, using Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, that we all have a special task here on earth. And the meaning of our lives is looking for that task. Are we spending too much time worrying about politics and checking out every terrible thing that's happened on earth every day on our phones, as opposed to searching more for that meaning, that task? I quote, "When one knows one's purpose, one can feel more fulfilled and will have the greatest strength to cope with difficulties. When one feels worried and depressed, that is usually a sign that somebody has moved away from that purpose." Are we searching for purpose in this world? Working with those in need, spending time with those we love, giving money to our church, or even better, our Jewish houses of worship? I use that joke for a different sermon. I won't be using it for this one for high holidays, by the way. I want quality time with my wife and my kids. That is what I feel is one of the purposes. So, and I'm very, what's the word where what they say, the nice way of saying you're cheap. Thrifty or frugal. So I'm very cheap. But I told my wife I'm going to splurge on a first-class flight for us to go to California. We're flying on what airline? Southwest. Hoffman further comments that self-reflection goes hand in hand with purpose. Some of the greatest Hasidic Jewish masters said one should place 1 hour aside each day for introspection. And that's what he suggests we should do for ourselves. Take time each day to ask ourselves, where am I going in my life? What kind of person have I become? Which one do I want to be? How have I been treating others? Have I forgotten my own needs? And it may not be an hour, but take a little time. That's the whole idea of the Sabbath, isn't it? Take some time with family and friends from the busy lives we live, and reflect. Stress remains related to our capacity to reach out and go beyond ourselves. It is inversely related. When we don't find community, when we don't find purpose, we languish. As the Talmud says, when we share our concerns with others, our anxiety level lowers. This is not new to anybody, but sometimes we forget to internalize it. And this wisdom goes back pretty far. Even King Solomon famously said, 2 are better than 1 with dealing with any issue. And one of my favorite biblical passages comes from Proverbs. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. The way we treat others often reflects our connection to the world. We just read a little bit ago a passage from the book of Esther, which talks about King Ahasuerus, who was kind of a buffoon, who spends half a year partying, and then spends over a year attending beauty pageants to find his wife. We cannot compare ourselves to people who have little in the way of a conscience. We cannot compare ourselves to people who don't care. Because let me tell you, people who don't care and who don't have a conscience do not feel stress. They don't. They don't have the same anxieties we have because it is not a part of their system. Are we to envy them? No. Because although we would prefer not to have anxiety, losing anxiety by becoming that type of person is beyond anything we can imagine. It is a punishment beyond anything we can give ourselves. Yes, we need to be people of conscience. And we need to find ways to deal with stress because we can't change all the factors. We can't change politics and the world and the finances and all these issues. We can change how we deal with stress, how we find habits to deal with stress, like eating healthy and exercising, things we know all members of the clergy do really well. Are we reading texts for inspiration? Are we reading books that inspire? Are we laughing and acting silly enough? He quotes that acting silly and laughing is central to the Jewish consciousness. I'm sure it counts for you too. Because if laughing and acting silly help us relieve stress, then we know who the greatest stress-free person on earth is, and that is Mr. Billy Hester, right? He has led the stress-freest life since the worst person on earth, Attila the Hun. But it's not because he doesn't care, it's because he laughs, he acts silly. in his landmark book, and if you want to read a good book, this is a good one. His landmark books, The 7 Questions You're Asked in Heaven, Reviewing and Renewing Your Life on Earth. Dr. Ron Wolfson teaches us about when we go to heaven, what are the 7 questions God is going to ask us? He says we all live with a cheshbon nefesh, in Hebrew, a kind of accounting of the soul. Accounting of the soul. How do we take inventory of ourselves? Interestingly enough, in modern Hebrew, cheshbon actually means the bill we pay at a restaurant, right? What is the bill going to be when we meet God? He references the great sage Rabbi, who tells us the very first question God is going to ask us, and drum roll please. This is a musical place. You guys should be better than that. The first question you're going to be asked by God is, were you honest in your business dealings? Which sounds like the wrong question, doesn't it? When I first read it, that is the worst. That doesn't make any sense, but he really says it has more to do with, were you honest? Did you show integrity and faithfulness in business, but also in everything you do? Were you honest in your relationships? Were you honest with others? Were you honest with yourself? How can God trust you if you are not honest? The second question is, did you spend time studying, becoming a good person? Louis Finkelstein from Jewish Theological Society says that prayer is the way we talk to God, but studying is the way God talks to us. By studying how to be good human beings. Number 3, did we, according to Rabbi Harold Schulreich, and I'm sorry for quoting all these rabbis, I know there's some ministers who've said good things too. Throughout history, there's been probably several, I would imagine. And Rabbi Schulreich asked us, did we have the immortality of influence? Not just did we have kids, but did we have impact on the next generation? Did we impact young people or people younger than us and help them understand the best way to lead their lives? Number 4, did we have hope in our hearts, which is something that we sometimes lack in America? Did the hope of God lead you to a time of goodness, health, and blessing? And 5 and 6, did we really get our priorities right? Could we tell what was really important in life? As for number 7, I haven't finished the book. When I get to number 7, I'm going to put it on social media for those of you who don't want to read it. All of these questions help us realize that stress lives within us and we can't escape it. But when we share our anxieties, when we have a purpose to search for, when we understand what matters in life and we learn perspective, our stress levels will lower. Because quite frankly, stress affects Americans seemingly more than any other country in the world. And we cannot change the factors that lead to us. But if we want to change our happiness level and get to number 1, because Americans want to be number 1 in everything, right? If we want to get to number 1, we have to figure out how to deal with stress. Most of the issues we face, other countries face too. And in many cases, other countries face issues much, much worse than we can ever imagine. I hope we in America can learn to base our lives on the Proverbs passage that states, if there's anxiety in a person's mind, let him quash and transform it into joy with encouragement. I hope we can learn to transform our anxiety into happiness, into enjoyment. And if I'm ever going to find a mentor to help me find my happy place, to get over my anxiety, I have to look no further than my soon-to-be 6-year-old son, the happiest person I know on planet Earth, the man who loves trains more than any other human being has ever loved trains in history. I asked him a while back, I said, Aryeh, it's my son's name, do you love choo-choo trains? And he said, Dad, I love choo-choo trains. And I said, do you really love choo-choo trains? He said, Dad, I really love choo-choo trains. And then I told him, do you want to go to the choo-choo train museum in Savannah? And he said, Dad, choo-choo betcha I do. May we all remember to look at the world like my son. Amen.